G'day mate, and welcome to another mini-series where we head back out to the three big wilderness singles bosses, Artio, Calvarion and Spindle. Firstly was how to PK at each boss, but this time we'll be turning the tables as we head back to each boss for 500 KC while being strapped up and ready for some anti-PKing. For our setup at Artio, we'll be using the Blood Barrage method with the Blood Bark set, the Accursed Scepter and Elodinus Ward to take on the boss, along with a D-High top and Varrock skirt for a bit of tank and the Heavy Ballista and Void Waker in our back pocket ready for when we need it. A humble 900k risk on the guide, but with our parchments and runes we'll be risking about 3.5 mil. Nothing crazy, shouldn't take long to cover our setup and loot. Starting at 111 KC on the log, we've already managed to pinch a pet during a bingo event a little while back, shout out to Beans and the Butt Munchers. We've also pulled 6 two-handers and pickaxes from other bosses, but with 725 Callisto KC we've had no luck on the other uniques. We've got a nice little loot tab set up in the bank to keep track of everything, stacked up with all the supplies that we'll need. Now let's get geared and head on out. Now, I'm not an experienced anti-PKer, but this was a learning experience to share with you guys and to show you that the wilderness doesn't have to be so intimidating. But whatever happens, happens, and of course no one is going to be the best when they're just a beginner, but experience is the best teacher and we definitely learnt a lot along the way. To kick things off, while we were outside of the lair psyching ourselves up to start, we had a PK log in and we were already on for our first fight. We let them TB us, and rather than rush into the lair, we decided to warm up with a 1v1 outside. We go for a freeze and get into it. If you like, you can swap your Accursed Scepter over to its built-in spell, which can be done easily when set to shift click with the menu entry swapper plugin. It's slightly faster and easier to use, but doesn't hit quite as hard as casting Ice Barrage. They go for an Abbey Dagger spec out of nowhere, catching us pop locked as we think about going for the counter, but we hesitate as they follow up with the Void Waker, getting a fair chance on us, so we hit a triple E and pull out. A little bit of rust to shake off, but we're not done yet. They start standing under us between hits while camping protect range, but we're able to get our own hits off with the Scepter and spot them sitting on low HP, so we try to line up a spec, but they sidestep out as we've only got a second left on our freeze and they get a need off just in time. We catch another freeze and keep on trying to line up a combo, though we're a little bit dry on the damage, but they're getting a little too comfortable sitting on low HP. We eventually get a decent hit from the Scepter as they pop lock themselves, and we follow it up with a cheeky 61 Void Waker for the KO. 6.5 mil loot before we even started, I'm happy with that. Though once Artio gets involved, things aren't quite so simple. To take on the bear itself, we've decided to go with the nice and lazy Blood Barrage method. Although Artio can attack with all 3 styles, it will only use its ranged attacks and magic special when we're at a distance, so all we need to do is stay close while protecting from melee, and although its melee attacks will chip through prayer, our Blood Barrage should keep our HP topped up. You would typically use a full Blood Bark set, but for anti-PKing, the Barrow's gloves are too good to give up, and of course, the banana hat stays on. Alternatively, you can go with the more intense method of freezing Artio while keeping back, dodging traps and flicking prayers while attacking with the Accursed Scepter or Webweaver bow, which is a bit quicker and much cheaper, but over about 10 hours, the Blood Barrage method is going to be a lot more chill. KC number 1, 300 Chaos Runes into the looting bag. While Blood Barrage does sustain our health for the most part, occasionally our damage will fall off, but rather than wasting our food, if we end up taking too much damage, we just freeze Artio before stepping back. But since its special attack is time based, it will always have it loaded up, so we'll need to protect from magic before swapping to range to avoid damage. And though the special attack is fired at a single player's location, it is a multi-attack that will hit any player next to or behind the target, and so knowing all of this, we do want to see if we can use it to our advantage. Other than that, there isn't too much to say about the kill. Now we just sit back and relax while we rake in the loot and wait for the PKers to roll on in. And not too long into our first trip, the first PK to drop in is a level 92 Voider. Unfortunately too low level to attack us, though we end up taking a big 34 smack from Artio as we try to flick our prayers for the telly block. Might need to be a bit more careful if we're going to do that. We get a few more kills in before we finish up our first trip at 10kc for 375k in loot. Just 22 KC in and we get our first unique, which is the cheeky dragon 2-hander. The trip after, we get an elite clue, and not too long after, our next fight arrives. A level 118 in a bit of an interesting setup, though they've got a decent risk. They catch a full TB, but we catch them back with the bear between us. Our RNG falls off and we miss a couple of prayers, getting put on the back foot right away, so we decide to head out and back in to give ourselves a moment to reset. We freeze our opponent and go for a freeze on Artio while they're within melee distance, but unfortunately we just end up phasing Artio, and normally when in combat with another player their hitbox would be prioritized, but here we learned that if we've attacked the bear last, that's not quite the case, as we end up dropping a Void Waker spec on Artio. So that's a little bit awkward. Time to go. They follow us out and dump their specs, but we hit our last combo eat and throw in our prayer. It would be smart to go for a freeze escape here, but since they've got a bit less firepower, we decide to stick around and see what happens. They're smart enough to try and pull us away from the trees, but we're not playing their game. We head on over to the trees in case we need to go for a freeze escape and so that we can use them to our advantage during the fight. We catch a freeze and start stepping behind the tree in between our hits to make it harder for them to get their attacks off. Some underwhelming RNG this fight, but we did get a small chance in as we caught them on half HP with the ballista. Though it looks like they've ran out of food just before we get our spec back, as they ended up teleporting away from us. All good, we're not always going to walk away with a loot key, but at least we walk away with the genie lamp. Now let's go smash out this clue scroll. And what do we get? Dog shit. Anyway, back in for our fourth trip, we get another elite clue scroll and 415k in loot on an 11kc trip. Elite casket number 2, what do we get? That's a lot of planks. Let's hope that's not a sign of things to come. KC number 50, 10% of the way there, and we're up to 2.17 mil on the loot tracker. Next trip, we had a level 63 drop in on us. Bit of a wild place for a baby pure, but we do get our third clue scroll already. And we get more dog shit. Next up, at 88kc in, we get the Claws of Callisto. Not worth much, but that's a tick on the collection log. And later on that trip, all of a sudden there were 2 naked guys going at it. Absolutely no clue what was going on here, but strange things happen out in the wilderness. Artio eventually cleans one of them up and the other one planks just before we're able to jump them. Not too long into the next trip, we had another fella come in and scope us out, though they're in some pretty strange gear to be killing Artio with, so we've got our guard up and our food hovered just in case they want to try something silly. They end up leaving, but not too long later, they're back. Bit of a dead giveaway as they whip out a Void Waker and try to rush us out, but we make good use of our combo food and survive their specs while Artio wears them down. Then we turn things back against them as we send a few Void Waker specs of our own. They smash down some food as they gap it for the exit, but we send them a belly on the way out and take them down on the other side. A quick little 950k, not exactly the kind of antis we're after, but we'll take it. Next trip, we had our first 100kc and we're at 4.27 mil on the loot tracker. But then just 4kc later... Oh baby, what do we have here? A cheeky Void Waker hilt, 18.5 mil, not bad. Alright, let's get out of here. Whack that into the loot tab and all of a sudden the collection log is looking alright. Just a tyrannical ring to go until we've got a green log. Let's see if we can make it happen. But even if you don't manage to get lucky, the regular loot is still more than enough to make a nice profit. 60 toad flax, a little bit over 200k for a regular drop, not bad. The next PK to show up was a level 96 in Elder Robes. Too low level for us, it seems like you might get a bit more action out here on the med level. Not too long after, we get another unique, the Dragon Pickaxe at 114kc in. And on the back-to-back, we get another grimy toad flax drop. We are making some money. A bit of loot on us, so we might as well hit the bank, but as we head for Ferox, a PKer just so happens to log in. They're in a cheap setup without a tome of fire, so I assume they're a bit of a noob, and while we're keen to take them on, we don't want to scare them off just yet, so we make a run for Ferox while letting them catch their TB, but they just end up splashing. That's a bit awkward. Oh well, let's just get into the fight then. Now, when fighting out here on Ancients and not having teleblock, we've got no chance of getting our opponent by Outlast since they'll just teleport away whenever they're in danger, so all we're really trying to do here is keep our opponent interested in the fight while lining up a chance for a KO. They come in with a Void Waker whack as we get a big ballista. We go for our spec hoping they'll switch prayer, but being a little slow worked out for them this time. They end up dumping their specs out of nowhere, but we hit a triple lead in between and it's not a problem. Now they're all out of firepower, though they do start bopping my head in with their whacks. Eventually we end up comboing each other down to low HP and we go for the risk, but they get kneed off just in time and we don't hit quite high enough. Getting a little bit low, but our TB is just about up, so time to start playing a little bit more aggressively. We've just got our spec back, so we fling back and try to go for a mage into melee stack, but they catch us one tile away. Could have been a decent chance there, but unfortunately they end up teleporting away. Oh well, fun little fight, at least we get to keep our loot. Our next interaction was a bit of an interesting one. Here we had a fella in a weird monk robe setup with a void helmet come in and start griefing us. Now, if you ever have someone start persistently ragging you out here, there's a good chance that they're really just trying to bait you into sculling on them by either annoying the shit out of you or acting like a noob and convincing you to try and one-shot them before they either dump their specs or teleblock you and call in a friend. Of course, our man's back, and while it's best to just ignore them or hop to another world, for the sake of science, let's see what happens when we bite the bait. We go in with a quick Void Waker spec before they can react, getting a fair chance on them, but no surprise they hit a triple lead and get their prayer on for our second spec before swapping into some magic gear and sending a TB. We get a little greedy here and go for the kill, but they smash down their food before catching us with an entangle. They then stand under us, and since we've got Artio keeping us in combat, I'm unable to log out and he's able to pass me over to his mate who's just arrived. They end up attacking the bait to start off with, not sure if that's a tactic or if they're just shit, but it works out for them as we're unable to cast our freeze and it throws us off a little. But we get our prayer on for their specs and hit our combo eats before we're able to make it out. Now we just buy ourselves some time while getting our HP and stats back up. We let them catch their freeze and throw on our tank gear to survive one more round of attacks, and while we've got less than 10 seconds left on our freeze timer, we're able to go for a freeze of our own before hiding behind the trees and hitting the logout button. Nice try, buddy. We hop worlds and make it back to safety, but while we're risking 82 mil, it's just not worth playing their games. Anyway, back to slaying the bear, and sorry about this one, but today was a good day. Nah, you've got to be kidding me. That's just lucky. What can I say? Alright then. Another one into the loot tab, and we are looking good. And after a little over 3 hours, we've made it to the end of day 1, finishing off on KC number 150. On the loot tracker, we're up to 7.4 mil from 2 PKs and a whopping 43.8 mil from Artio. I would have thought those numbers were opposite, but that's just the way she goes sometimes. Back on for day 2, and 10 kills into our first trip, we've got some action from a max combat and a barrow set. Unfortunately, our RNG has turned off as we can't catch our freeze to start off and they take the upper hand early. We end up catching them in close with the bear on us, but we're a little rusty to start off the day and miss our chance to make something happen. This isn't quite going our way, so we decide to take things outside. Once we're back on our feet, we're keen to give them a little 1v1 before making our exit. We eventually get a little burst of damage and go in for our spec, but they catch their freeze on our way in. Once we're unfrozen, we send some Hail Mary specs, getting them down low and getting a cheeky chance in with the ballista, but of course we noodle. Not much point in sticking around while we're still TB'd, but we're hungry for a big kill, so we push our luck a little bit more, but once we're down to a brew, we decide it's time to make our exit. While we're going for a freeze escape, the last thing we want to do is freeze each other at the same time, so we wait to see if they land or splash their entangle before going for ours. And we're lucky enough to catch them after they splash a couple of times, otherwise that could have been a little spicy. Back over to the bear, we get our second dragon two-hander in an uninterrupted 20 kill trip for 650k. A little later on, we get hit by another main in some average gear, unfortunately at a bad time as we're juggling our loot. We try to get off a cheeky blood barrage before we need to eat and the battle is on. A couple of mistakes to start off with as we're caught off guard, but we eat through it before catching our freeze and turning things around. We hit them with the DD while Artio's melee attacks chip away, but unfortunately our damage starts to fall off when we need it most. A decent scrap this time, we go in for another spec, but with the follow-up ballista hitting ones, it's just not our fight. We end up taking it outside and get a decent 1v1 out of them, but we're unable to get any more chances and they end up teleporting out. All the way up to 234 KC now, a bit of a dry patch until... Oh shit, okay, that's a green log, let's go. Tyrannical ring at 345 KC, that's sick. 234 KC on the tracker, and we've had at least one of every single tradable unique and finished off the log. I don't know what's going on, maybe content creator luck is real. We turned on the recorder and shit just started dropping. Back to it, and at 271 KC the streak continues as we pull our second dragon pickaxe, shortly followed by dragon two-hander number 3 at 283 KC. A pretty peaceful day today, we wind up at 300 KC. Not too much action from the PKers, though Artio is still pumping out the uniques. Finishing the day with 52.4 mil in loot and a green log, I can't complain. We're back on for day 3, and on just our third kill we're already on. And of course we get hit by a decent PKer right away while our clicks aren't warmed up, so things start off a little rough for us. But we head outside and get ourselves set before rushing back in. We drop a freeze on Artio before dropping a freeze on the PKer, but they catch us as well and the battle is on. We try to fakey a ballista into a Void Waker spec, but mistime our unfreeze timer by a tick, giving it away. We then head over to the door but get caught in between two thoughts as we spot them sitting on low HP. We should have gone back in with the spec as Artio was coming in, but we try to catch them with the spec outside of the lair and they see it coming. Some shit plays as we're a bit rusty to start the day, but it is what it is. Now time for a quick 1v1 outside of the lair. We get a little bit of a chance to come through with some momentum, but it's just not working out for us this time. We get a bit too low before our spec comes back, so we decide to play it safe and make our escape while we can. Not too long after, we were hit again by a fella in Mystics. This time they're having a little bit of trouble themselves as they come in without Protect Up, start falling into some traps and get themselves slapped up by Artio. They heal up and we get a little bit low ourselves, so we hop outside to reset and a genie decides that now would be the perfect time to show up. We head back in to try and line up a play, but for some reason they don't want to follow us in, but we're keen for the fight, so I guess we'll take the 1v1 outside. Some shocking RNG this fight as we keep on splashing over and over, but if they're gonna sit on half HP then we're just gonna send our specs and it's over just like that. What do we get? 450k. Can't expect too much from the noobs, but at least that's another kill on the board and a cheeky bit of agility XP. Just after we get back, halfway into our second kill, another PKer rocks up. We catch a freeze on them as they run through and Artio bops them over the head, and all of a sudden they're having second thoughts as they telly on out. Well then, back to it. Up to 333 KC now, a bit of action to start the day. We're now up to 54.1 mil in the looting bag and 8 mil from loot keys. And not too long later, we get hit once again by a main and a decent risk. They're playing it nice and aggressive to start off as they get a little bit of RNG and dump their specs, but we eat through it and catch our freeze and now it's our turn. We try to catch them off guard as they splash their freeze and we run in with our spec and Artio follows up, but they get their eats off well. We have a little bit of a scrap by the exit as Artio keeps tearing through us both, but we don't have too much of a chance in this situation while they're just camping protect melee and eating through our hits, so we head on out, but looks like they're thinking about getting out of here as well as they exit the lair at the same time. We keep the fight going outside and keep up some nice damage as we get a chance in with the ballista, but once again, no luck when we need it. We head through the lair once more to see if we can line something up, but they make the smart decision and disappear. Oh well, on to the next one. A bit later on, we had a level 112 in Dragonhide and a magic shortbow drop in while we were sitting on low HP. As always, in the wilderness, we trust no one, so we play it safe and freeze Artio off us so we can heal up, and just as we swap to protect range, they hit us with the Debo Axe combo. Nice try mate, but you'll have to do better than that. We chase after them and try to send a spec of our own, but they're not too keen to stick around. Cheeky dog. 400 KC completed and we're on the home stretch now. Claws of Callisto number 2 at 405 KC. The big 420 KC and we're up to 57.3 mil in the loot tab. One of the PKs from earlier is back once again, but it doesn't look like they're keen to take us on anymore as they hit a swift log out. Honestly, with some of the PKers, all you need to do is put up a little bit of a fight and they won't want to mess around with you anymore. But a bit later on and we've got our next contender. We try to drop a freeze on Artio but just end up phasing it while taking a bit of damage. We get thrown off and decide to eat, which is quite unfortunate because our play worked out perfectly this time as our opponent gets sent flying for a 50. We eventually get set and send our specs, but we're unpotted for the first one and our second only hits a 15 while Artio hits a 26. We follow up with the big ballista, red barring them, but instead of coming through for the finish, Artio passes back and doesn't melee them, and they get their telly off. So close. Not too long later, the same fella comes through and drops a TB, but I don't think he was too happy about how the last fight went as he drops a slur on his way out, but we're not letting them get away with that and chase them on out. Looks like they're still keen for the 1v1, so let's get into it. We catch them with a range fakie into Void Waker spec off the back of a little momentum, but the big combos just aren't coming through at the moment. At least we got some combo food off them. They end up sending a double maul off the back of a zero halberd. Could have been a nice move, but he was a little too keen to send them all. We try to return serve with a Void Waker spec out of nowhere while they're sitting a little low, but they're still playing it smart and eating well. Fair enough. The scrap goes on, and while we are up a little bit on damage, we did get a bit greedy as we sat on low HP after seeing a big XP drop as the Halley and Maul both came through with a fat stack of 80. GG's. Didn't expect him to be using a live arrow with a G-Maul, but fair enough, minus 4 mil. I ended up catching them at Ferox afterwards and had a little chat with them. They apologised for flaming, which was nice, not that I take it hard anyway, saw just memes out in the wildy, but he was a pretty chill guy. GF mate, back to it. Up to 444 KC now with 58.7 mil in loot from Artio, still well up in profit. The next PK we had rock up was a bit of a strange one. Wasn't quite sure if they forgot their robes or just didn't realise, but they're trying to catch a TB in their ranged gear. We freeze Artio before dropping a freeze on them, then we hit them with a Bally as they get sent by Artio's magic attack, following up with a Void Waker spec while they're stunned, but the damage lets us down and they get their telly off. So that's a perfect example of how we want things to go. Not too long later, our man was back and keen to rumble as he goes in for the DCB spec. We give them a scrap in the middle of the lair as we wait for our spec to fully regenerate from the last round, and after wearing them down with a big Bally, we just send a double Void Waker, comboed with Artio, and he's been dealt with. 260k loot with no other gear? Yeah, I'm not sure what that man was thinking either. 800k trip though, not bad. Then after quite a while without one, we finally get our 4th elite clue. And on the back-to-back, another Dragon 2-hander. Elite clue time. And what do we get? Ooh, a mimic. Alright. Mimic down, and what do we get? Dog shit. A little bit later, we had a level 117 in average gear drop in. We drop a freeze on Artio before catching a freeze on our opponent. They splash a few times, so we try to catch them with Artio's magic attack, but we mess it up while trying to avoid the traps and they teleport out right away. Looking back, if we had just entered onto the traps, we would have caught them with Artio's magic attack and we would have almost been guaranteed the kill. Unfortunate, but it feels like things are starting to click. Not too much damage taken though, so we keep the trip going and eventually they come back for round 2. This time they're straight onto the entangle and come out swinging before we're able to get them under control. We get each other down to low HP, but they've got the next hit, so we play it safe and hit a triple elite as they dump their Void Waker specs and poke us with a Fang. Turns out they're actually risking a bit, but unfortunately they're not keen to let us get our own specs off and telly out on us. Damn. On the home stretch now, we had a level 83 come by, too low level for us. Then we had another Void Waker rusher, way too obvious there mate. We hit a triple elite and send a spec back at them, but they get their telly off. What a dog. And finally, we had another PKer arrive, but it turned out to be the guy that took us down earlier, and this time, instead of getting PK'd, we were wished good luck as he went on with his day. While we'd love to get our revenge, I guess it's not all about the loot, but sometimes the friends you make along the way. Or some stupid shit like that. God damn it. Anyway, after all this time, we're finally up to finishing our goal with KC number 500. An interesting experience learning to anti-PK here at Artio. While farming the boss has been as easy as anything, it really goes from 0 to 100 when the PKers rock up. What we learn is that most fights are pretty one-sided, as it's mostly a game of capitalizing on early momentum versus praying correctly and eating well. If our opponents got on a roll before we got them under control, it was hard to turn things around with Artio constantly chipping at us, and if they got their specs in, we'd be forced to burn through our combo food and bail out. So it's important not to hesitate and not worth trying to flick prayers for the telly block. We're not going to survive in the lane for long, so it's best to just go for a KO, and if things don't work out, we can rely on our Ice Barrage to make a freeze escape outside. But since Ancients is meta against Artio, it doesn't quite feel like the perfect place for anti-PKing. If we took the upper hand, most of the time our opponents would just teleport out. So if you were to put in the effort to do the freeze method, you could go all the way and use a normal spellbook for teleblock, but you'll be stuck using Entangle. And lastly, it wasn't as easy to line up a combo with Artio's special attack as I had hoped, but I think that was more of a skill issue than anything. We had a couple of chances too, but we just couldn't capitalize, though I'm sure you could cook up some better tactics and with a bit of practice make it a bit more reliable. Anyway, KC number 500, what do we get? A couple of snappy Ds. Looking back, I'd say the overall experience was pretty fun but pretty difficult. Definitely a good challenge. I'd say that anti-PKing at Artio is more suitable for experienced players that can think of some smart techniques to outplay your opponents and can lock in to line up some sick KOs. But it just goes to show that if you come prepared for PKers, it really isn't too difficult to survive, and if you're keen to take them on, with Artio involved, it's anyone's game. I'm keen to revisit and try out some different methods in the future, but for now it's time for the loot check. From 500 Artio KC, we managed to loot a whopping 61.5 mil. Insanely lucky on the uniques, we pulled 2 dragon pickaxes, 4 dragon two-handers, 2 claws of Callisto, a tyrannical ring, and we were super lucky to pull 2 Void Waker hills worth 18.5 mil each. With an extra 8.3 mil on top from 4 successful anti-PKs, we raked in 69.8 mil in total. There was a fair mix of PKs, a few raggers and rushers, but also some respectable fights, and though we didn't PK as much as we could have, at least we were only taken down once for 4.2 mil after chasing the fight. In supplies we used about 150k in food, 3 mil in pots, 190k in javelins, 1.9 mil in nether, and a bit more than I expected, but 18.7 mil in runes, totaling just under 24 mil all up in supplies, so the overall profit comes out to 41.6 mil. A fair chunk of change lost by using the blood barrage method, but that's just the cost of being lazy, and for me, over 10 hours, it's definitely worth it. But while we were only doing 500 KC for the video, it felt like things were starting to click and I couldn't leave you without a nice kill, so we stuck it out a little longer and here's what happened. Oh, wrong clip, my bad. Again, I'm sorry, but my luck has never been so good. But it wasn't all good, we did end up getting stacked out, as well as comboed out, and we even lagged out. What the fuck was that? But eventually we did get a couple of decent KOs. Here we've taken down the bear just as the PKer rocks up, but we start fighting back, and once Artio respawns we take our chance to dump our specs and take him out. A cheeky 1.5 mil loot, we can do better than that. Here we try to catch our opponent with Artio's magic attack, but I didn't realise I was brewed down too far and mess it up as I missed the freeze, but we keep the fight going. If we can manage to pull it off, I'm sure we can get an insane stack, and we weren't giving up until we got what we wanted. We chase them around and dump a spec to keep them on the back foot, and the damage comes through as we give them a whack, then switch into the ballista as Artio sends its special attack. They switch their prayers and get sent flying back to Lumbridge. A follow-up Void Waker to make sure, but he's already cooked. 3 mil loop, not bad, a good quality KO, but that didn't quite satisfy. Here we try to freeze the bear and ends up phasing it, but we catch a freeze on the PKer and get into it. They drop an entangle on Artio for us, giving us a chance to come in close while we're unfrozen. We keep the Bally out to keep them praying range, then as Artio sends its special attack, we switch into the Void Waker and send both of our specs, stacking them on the stun as Artio comes in with the finisher. Interestingly, we were sent by the special attack a tick earlier than our opponent. I thought I'd time my prayer perfectly, but the stars still aligned as we were caught in the trap, keeping us next to them. With Bid, they managed to get a single lead off, still unlucky to not take them out with our spec, but this time Artio showed why it's not to be messed with. 4 mil loot, fuck it, we're taking it. Next up, we mix things up as we try out some Vengeance Anti-PKing at Calvarion. For now, let's just say things go a little differently.